guys, here come the dollies. They got fresh sinkers, hot coffee, and the sweetest smile.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Clubmobile.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
We have another fabulous guest joining us today in the Clubmobile. Her last name will ring a bell, and we hope that it's easily recognizable. Please welcome to the Clubmobile Jaclyn Basilone, who is the great niece of John Basilone.
Good morning, dollies.
How you doing?
I'm doing
Hi.
great. How are you guys?
Wonderful.
That's
Good,
very
yeah.
Charlie. I like that. Very Charlie's Angels of you. Good morning, dollies.
I think that's how everybody should greet you. Hello, dollies.
I think
That's
that's
a
very cute.
prerequisite for anybody coming on the podcast after you,
That's now the
just
thing.
so you know. I'm putting
And
it in the rules. It's a prerequisite now.
I think since every dolly was pretty much told that they needed to have their own signature scent, for any women that you have come on, you need to ask them what if they had to pick any perfume, what would be their signature scent?
Love that. That's amazing. I
We'll come
love
back to
that.
that with you later. How's that?
Yeah, we'll do that right at the end. That'll be very
Yes,
cute.
right at the end.
Um, because of you guys know who we are by now, we love to talk about the women during the war. If it hasn't become clear yet, we're going to be talking about Lena Basilone and her relationship with John. And we've been really lucky to connect with Jaclyn, who is going to tell us, I think, the mostly unknown story of Lena and what Jaclyn knows and what she has found out over the years. So, Jaclyn, was the story something that you had grown up with, or was it something you found out later on in life?
So I have to start with John because all my knowledge starts with John. So
Yeah.
I'm Jaclyn Basilone and I'm an only child. And in my family, we have rather large generational gaps. So my dad is 75. So my dad was born 1950. My dad is named John Michael Basilone. And he, as far as I was ever told, was the first male in the family born after Manila John passed away. And so he was given that name. Fantastic. Well, I was in early grade school looking for something in the home office closet, digging through papers. I don't remember what I was looking for. And I found just a stack of papers all about John Basilone. And some of them had some images, photos. Some of them had he's been depicted a lot in like hand drawings where he just looks like Rambo. He's holding the machine gun and he's topless and he's just looks like he's ready to take over the world. And so I'm in a closet just reading like who, what? And I didn't understand because I was little and I was like, and it says that he passed away because, John absolutely, passed away and during his war efforts. And so I was like, I don't get it. My dad is well and alive. And so I came out of the closet with this paperwork and went to my mom and was like, I don't understand. And she's like, oh, that's who your dad was named after. And I was like, ah, okay. And so growing up, obviously I'm a child of the internet era, but the internet era wasn't anywhere near the way it was now. So while you could research a little bit, there wasn't a whole lot on the internet. But I started to realize how impactful John Basilone was for people at a very young age. I had been in an accident and was under the supervision of my 16-year-old cousin. I think I was in fourth grade at the time. And we had to go to the emergency room and I needed to get stitches. I got 110 stitches on that day and my parents were not there. They did show up later, but this was, at the beginning of 16-year-olds having cell phones, et cetera, et cetera. And a man comes sliding into my room sideways. They're actively stitching my open leg up and he's in scrubs. And I swear to God, he almost banged into the bed and fell over. And he grabs me by the shoulders and he's basically shaking me. Tell me about your family. And I had known enough in my life to go, oh, are you a Marine? And he was like, yes. I said, come back when my leg is closed. I can see the bone. And so I asked him to
Gosh.
get out for a minute and he did. And then he kindly came back and spoke to my parents who then showed up, who could shed a lot more light on it because I was traumatized. And same thing in my youth, I dated Army and I was lucky enough to date an Army guy that was stationed in Hawaii on Oahu. And so I got to make multiple trips to Hawaii. And one day I was going through TSA and the TSA agent looked at my license and he said, say your last name. And I said, Basilone. All of a sudden I hear, oh my God. And I can hear people getting shoved out of the way. And there's this Marine guy and he was going to to post in Hawaii. And he was like, I must talk to you. And I was like, that's fine, but like, just wait, I'll wait for you right here. And so I started to figure out over the years how impactful my family name was. And so I, of course, wanted to know everything about it because I'm a curious mind. And so I got to know a lot about John and the family and our family tree and where we come from in Southern Italy, and just how the family got here, the who, what, when, where, why. And then, of course, you learn immediately after you learn anything about John, you learn about Lena. You learn about the fact that he is on post. He's in San Diego. He's at Camp Pendleton, and he is basically a rock star. People see him coming, and I sent you guys photos. Did you guys see the photos of the way women
Yeah.
get him?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Well, and firstly, I
I
know
can't say I blame them.
no,
No, me either.
and that's
Not to come off like off the cuff as like that person, but like your uncle was a fox.
yeah, I agree with you, and we're related. I'm not trying to be creepy, but he was a handsome guy,
Mhm.
and so
There's something about that generation of men.
oh
There just
man,
is.
We were saying that, weren't we, Gabby? We were like, they were just men.
They were men.
And we said it in such a way as they were
You
just
see men
men.
now, and I'm like, you're a little boy.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Which probably alludes to why I'm still single. Because I just side eye anything that doesn't look like a real man.
Absolutely, I agree with you. But so, so if anybody is not familiar with John, John goes to kind of a lost soul, grows up, enlists in the military, goes to the army. He's sent away in the army. He's sent to Manila. He had been kind of like a boxer, a slightly competitive mid heavyweight boxer. And he goes to Manila and he kind of gets well known because he partakes in a lot of the boxing that they're doing over there. And he makes a name for himself, goes into the army. His however many years are up, 3 or 4. He goes home to Jersey. He takes a couple just dead end jobs. I think I say off the top of my head that he at one point in time either was a caddy or drove a trash truck. I can't remember. And he was just like, oh my God, I'm so bored. I really miss it. I want to go back into the military, but I want to be boots on the ground, first on land. And so he said from all of his experience in the army, he realized that his best chance at getting back to a war zone would be if he had joined the Marines because they were boots on the ground first. And so he goes back, joins the Marines, does a lot of crazy heroic stuff, and he's the first Marine in World War II to get both the Congressional Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross. And so he's a celebrity. And then I know we talked about this just between the three of us at one point in time. I have always felt like he and Frank Sinatra, always my hypothesis, are the reason why Italian immigrants, Italian Americans became more socially acceptable in the United States because prior to World War II, Italian American immigrants were very looked down upon. And
Yes.
so he comes home, and the United States is like, look at him. He's handsome. He's got a Congressional Medal of Honor. There's a lot of national pride at the time during World War II. And so they're like, let's put him on a war bond tour. And he raises not 100, he raises $1.5 million in war bonds. But to that point, so John raises $1.5 million in his war bond tour, and he hates it because he doesn't want to be a celebrity. But I did a quick Google, and I think 1.5.
Edit that shit out.
Oh yeah, they have to edit that now.
Yeah.
Thanks, babe. Um, Anyway, so John does his war bond tour and he raises $1.5 million. And I think based on a quick Google I did, how many Americans were in the service in World War II? Do we know?
I don't think there's ever been like an exact. It's in the
Exact
high
number.
millions.
I know we've looked up how many women,
Yeah, but not collectively.
but
How
not
many?
collectively. Now, when you say 1.5 million, is that today's number or 1.5
No, that's
million
then.
in 40,
I think
43, 44?
I think it's the number from back then, but it was just a quick
Woo.
Google search. But I found it interesting because the next Google search I did was how many Italian Americans fought in World War II? 1.5 million.
Wow.
wow.
There were that many of us in the war.
We made up 10% of the war force, I'm going to say.
That's
And
something to be proud of.
that I think brought a sense of redemption to our culture.
Yes.
So, anyways, so John gets marketed.
Hmm.
He's stunning. Hollywood starlets want to hang out with him. Now, this I know personally. I know that they used to leave Camp Pendleton in San Diego and go to LA, and they would go to the Biltmore Hotel, which is still standing, and it's in a terrible part of town, but it's beautiful if you ever get the chance to go. And John used to rent multiple rooms and throw huge parties at the Biltmore. And that's where all the Hollywood starlets hung out because that was LA. That was LA in
Right.
the heyday of Hollywood. And
Hmm.
it's a very bougie, still absolutely gorgeous, ornate hotel. And so he had his pick of the litter, for lack of better terminology, thanks to this gentleman right here. And so he had been dating, according to this woman, Carolyn, while he was in the military. And I sent you a picture of the two of them together. And then in the mess hall one day, he meets Lena. And Lena is militant, strong-minded, independent, Italian, sassy. One of those women that I think knows exactly what she wants. Apparently, it's Gabby. Um, she knows what she wants. She's gonna go get it. I'm sure Gabby cooks like a beast in the kitchen. She's Italian. So
Correct.
if anybody is interested in a strong-willed Italian chef, we have Gabby, but you have to be manly. You got to be a John Basilone. Anyways, so he meets Lena and they immediately hit it off. They are married, I think, within 3 to 4 weeks. And I sent you guys a copy of the Catholic marriage certificate
Hmm.
as
Yeah.
well that was filled out, I want to say, by the priest, maybe, but it's very feminine handwriting, so maybe it was a woman. And now I tell everybody this statement. I also sent you the picture of Lena and John leaving the chapel in California when the rice is flying. And I want you guys to notice that every single woman in the pictures that's not Lena looks at John the way that John looks at Lena on
Yeah.
their wedding
Yeah.
day. And the way that John looks at Lena on their wedding day is how I want my partner to look at me.
Every
All
woman
the
should be looked at
time.
that. Every woman should
Every
be looked
woman.
at that way
Hmm.
once in her life.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
he loved her, and there's no confusion in our family about that. And on Lena's 32nd birthday is the day that she gets the telegram that John has passed away while basically storming the beach. And we all know that she absolutely never remarried. I mean, she was in Camp Pendleton, so she's in California. That's where she lives, but she's from Oregon originally. She's actually from a working farm in
Mhm.
Oregon, somewhere outside of Portland. And she stays in California. She had left Portland to go to business school. I can't say that the business school was in California per se, but that's when she left home. And then the war broke out and she enlisted because she was always just described as, if a need was found, she would, and she knew she could fill it, she would fill it. And that kind of mentality continues throughout her life because even after the war efforts, she did take a job. I want to say she worked for the telephone company for a while, but she was very active in volunteer work. And I know that she was a child of a family with multiple siblings, and she was active in taking care of some of the babies in the family. She was the hostess of all the family holidays, and her life was very private after John passed
Right.
away. And the center of her life was her home and her immediate family, the family members. She remained the hostess of the holidays. That house apparently was never out of order, extremely tidy. And everyone says, oh, she could cook, she could cook, she could cook. But apparently, this is just a wildly true story. Her nephew, Bob Rigi, who, and I hate to say, I don't know if it's Rigi or Rigi because even our name is pronounced differently depending on where you're standing in the
Mine
United
is too. Yeah.
alone. People will hit it on the phone. Are you Basilone, Basilone, Basilone? And I'm like, well, it really depends on where you're standing, I think.
Yeah.
And I was born in Texas, and I feel I have zero accent, but I come from a Yankee and a Midwestern. My dad was raised in Cleveland, and my mom was raised in Kansas City, Missouri. So here I have nothing, and here we are. So And that's just how Lena stayed. And I shared with you guys, the Pacific brought to life Lena's story, and it brought to life John's story in a way that was so personable. It shines light on not just what he did while he was overseas and how he got his Medal of Honor and how he very sadly passed away, but it really humanizes everybody's stories stateside. And when they're on leave in Australia, you think about not Sledge. Oh God, who did James Badge Dale play? The name escapes me at this very moment.
Leckie,
Leckie.
Robert Leckie.
Robert
I
Leckie.
loved Leckie's love story in Australia, and I wasn't super familiar with Leckie until the Pacific came out, and I watched it, and I wanted to throw a shoe at that Australian woman. You ignorant! I would
Mhm.
have married him in a heartbeat. But you know what? Things work out the way that they're supposed to, and I think that Lena and John were meant to be together because her refusal to remarry after he passed, in my opinion, is a testament to the love that she had for him. And after talking to I'm going to say the Rigi family, she was very much an intimidating woman. She had brothers. She wore the pants in that family. She hosted the holidays. It was her way or the highway. She knew what she wanted, and it stayed that way. I'm sorry about the wrestling match happening right here.
That's fine, you're good.
But apparently she was I don't want to say a terrifying woman because that would be a disservice to her honor, but I like that adjective because I love a capable woman greatly. And and Bob, her nephew, said, again, my adjective, not his, for as terrifying a woman as she would soften vocally and physically at any mention of John, that it almost turned her into a gentle, tender individual. And I think that, and have always thought that their love was very genuine. And I think that magical things happen when two souls are just meant to cross paths and be together. And I think that that was one of those relationships that, if he had been able to come home, would have stood the test of time. But I very much think that we wouldn't have heard from either of them. I
Mhm.
think they would have remained very quiet. And I think they would have just stayed family people. And I think they would have lived the life that Lena lived for the extent of her life. I don't know that John would have been as public as to do volunteer work. I'm sure he would have been active, but I don't think that I still think he would have not wanted the spotlight. But I think they would have lived in a home, a tidy home. I think there would have been a lot of food. I don't think he would star in his own biofilm. I don't think that was ever going to happen.
Yeah. Was there ever because I know that obviously from the Pacific there were so many stories and books. Was there ever offers for Lena to make a movie about John? Was there ever any offers brought to your family or to Lena specifically to make a biopic about John or their short marriage or their time together?
I don't know if it was a biopic per se, because that detail I don't have, but I do know that at least two studios went to Lena in California. She never left. I mean, sure, she left, but she never moved away from California. Went to Lena in California, basically saying, we want to make the John Basilone movie. We want to make the John Basilone story. And each and every time she declined. And I'm sure she stood to profit in some capacity from that. I'm sure she did. Um, but she declined. And I have to assume it's because she was a private person, and some forms of mourning, I think, are very private.
Yeah.
There are some things that you can hold closer to yourself and hold on to for yourself if you can keep it for yourself. I know that's very weird. But I've
No,
No,
not weird
it's
at all.
not. It makes perfect sense.
And so when the Pacific came to be, the production team obviously reached out to everyone's families. Now John still has John was one of 9 or 10 kids originally. I can't remember. I'm so bad with numbers. Please forgive me. But his brother just passed away maybe 2, 3 years ago. So he had living siblings up until the very recent past. So Lena was the sponsor of the USS Basilone, the warship that they christened almost immediately following the loss, and that was ironically christened in Texas, which is where I live. And that ship, I'm sorry to take you guys on a segue. That ship was decommissioned in the 70s after a boiler exploded, and it actually killed three Navy members of the Navy. So that ship was decommissioned. Well, they actually just rechristened a brand new destroyer in John's name, and they did it up in Bath, Maine. And I was lucky enough to go along with many of the other families. And a lot of the Sergeant Major Black was there. He's now retired. I love him and his wife. His wife is a Marine. You know, once you're a Marine, you're never not a Marine. So I would love you guys to talk to Mrs. Sergeant Major Black, because I think she would be fantastic to have on. And I've got her number. I will ask her.
Please.
You.
Yes, that would be awesome. That would be great.
But they rechristened the ship, and it was so interesting because John's brother passed away maybe a month after the christening. And so it was the last sibling to go, to be lost from that family. But there are still Basilones running amok, and we all refuse to give up our last names, which is why when I married, I was like, no, I'm not going to be Mrs. Smith. I'm so sorry. You can fight me, I guess.
I feel like you would lose some of your pizzazz if you
Yeah.
weren't namely
Yeah.
Basilone.
Yeah, even if you don't know what my last name represents, I love that it's so tragically Italian. Literally every other letter is a vowel.
Yep. Yeah, same as Kathy.
And I love that. So when the Pacific came out, they had great people to speak to about it, because then you have to also take into consideration all the people that wrote books. You have Helmet for My Pillow, and oh God, I'm gonna forget the other ones. So Sledge wrote a book, Lecky wrote a book, and they were like a guide map through that period in time. And because John had been so highly publicized, it was easy to use him as a guide map through that time. And so, but no, Lena said no all the way to every single offer that ever came through. And she stood on her own 2 legs independently until the day she died. Let's just not forget that she brought his flag and his Medal of Honor home to New Jersey and gave it to his parents. And I don't think she kept any money that came from him either.
Did your family keep the medal, or has it gone off to a museum?
It is in a museum. It's in Virginia, and I'm so forgive me. I'm ADHD. The fact that I can recall as much as I can is so fantastic. Okay, it's at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia. And John himself is buried at the Arlington Museum, the Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia, which brings me back to another interesting point. The military had told Lena on multiple occasions, we will make arrangements. You are a Marine, that is your husband. We will bury you with John. To which her response was, I don't want to be a bother to anybody. That's not necessary. And so if you are one of those people that likes to visit, the chapel where they got married in California is still standing. Camp Pendleton is still standing. There's a fantastic museum at the boot camp facility at MCRD in San Diego, a Marine Museum, which is so fascinating. But Lena is in California, and John is in Virginia, and I think we should take a massive road trip. I think we should all fly to Virginia, tour, fly to California, tour. And
Winnie and I have had this discussion where we're like, we need to fly somewhere, start there, rent a car, and just
go through.
There's so many spots that just, and the big one is we want to get out to Sweetwater, to Avenger Field in Texas, where the Wasp trained. That's the big one.
Mm.
Yeah. And you guys
And
could have
then
people sponsor your stays the whole way through.
Oh, we
You-
wish.
we
no,
wish
no,
we
no,
wish
no.
we were that. We wish we were that podcast where people would sponsor us to
No,
stay.
listen, you should do it like a foreign exchange student. I have two guest rooms. You each can have a room. I will feed you. You stay at my house in Dallas. If you go to LA, I nominate Josh to put you guys up.
He would love that.
Yeah. And then I'm sure absolutely Henry Sledge, who's E.B. Sledge's son, who just wrote a brand new book that everybody should go take a look at. His wife Andrea, I'm sure they would host you. I'm sure they would love it. You guys, you've got to have friends everywhere. You should get hosted. Absolutely.
We have friends everywhere now, which is
Yes,
insane how one
it is. It's crazy.
for anyone wondering how this came to be, we took a shot in the dark and we messaged Scott Gibson, who played Akak Haldane in the Pacific. And we said if you have any information about Lena and John, if you could let us know, because we were going to do this episode by
Blind.
ourselves based on our own minimal research, which was a rewatch of the Pacific, a scout through the National Archives, and Google.
Yeah.
And then Scott said, "Hey, here's Jaclyn," and now we're all friends.
His exact words were, "Here's Jaclyn's number." She said, "Call her anytime. She's awesome."
Mm.
And let's talk
And
about how
Scott, you were right.
men looked like men back then, but let's talk about 6 foot tall Scott Gibson. Oh, what a beautiful man. I don't think, with the exclusion of one person who I won't name, I don't think there was a single man that appeared in the Pacific that I don't have a deep love for. Deep love.
That's
No
where I was
names
gonna
named. We know
go.
who you're
No
talking
names
about.
named.
No
We
names
know.
named.
Knowing what we know
Um,
now, that's where I
knowing
was
what we
gonna go.
oh,
How
knowing what I know now.
how did you feel about the man that portrayed John Basilone
Yes.
and the actress
John
they
Seda, how
picked
did you feel about
to
him
play Lena?
and
Yeah.
the actress who portrayed Lena? I mean, that's two people playing your family. You have
I
to have some strong opinion on it.
I think
Unless it's bad, then don't say it.
Well, I think Lena, I think Annie, Lena, I think they couldn't have picked a better person for stature and just this and the
Mm,
way they did her hair. I have goosebumps right now. But
mm.
to me was such a great portrayal, and she was, in my opinion, even in uniform. And while they tried to make the women's uniforms feminine, they were, but it was still hard to be an individual in that period in time.
Yeah.
Annie played her elegantly. I think she was an elegant woman. And thinking about Lena and looking at all the pictures of her, I think John was her happiness. I don't think she ever smiled like when you see her with John. And I know that she was, even though the families were very far apart because John's family stayed in New Jersey and she lived in California, I know that she was accepted into the family. I think initially it was somewhat hesitant because it happened so quickly and the family wasn't there for the wedding. And like I point out to you guys, John writes that letter, "Dear Mom, please don't be upset. I'm getting married. Don't worry. I also told Helen." And I point out to everybody, who is Helen? Was there this poor heartbroken woman back in New Jersey who he was like, "Helen, who?" I found Lena,
And
and
now everything's done.
bye bye, Helen. But that's how it is when you meet somebody that, I mean, I hate to say it, the first time I ever saw Colby, maybe not the first time. The first time I was like, "Oh my gosh, so handsome." But the second time I ever saw him, I was like, "Wow, that is my husband." I just knew. I was like, if I can't have that, my heart's going to explode. And I think that's how they felt about each other. Um, and so you just have to be with who you want to be with, no matter if it upsets Mom because she can't be there, or you have to leave Helen from hometown back, Carolyn. And I hope you guys post the picture of Carolyn, the two of them out at dinner,
Mm.
because I think that's truly who he was. I think that he wanted a partner, and I think that he obviously enjoyed women, but I think that he wanted the right woman. And it's so interesting to me, and I think I want every woman to take if nothing else away from this conversation. If he wanted to, he would. He
Yeah.
had his choice of absolutely anybody in the world,
Yes.
and when he found Lena, he wanted to, so he did.
Yes.
That's it.
And that's why it got to happen so quickly, because he knew.
The letter
Did,
cracks me up though, because now as an Italian, now I can say this. As the boy, I have a brother. So there's something about Italian boys, right? And their mothers. They're like this. My brother and my mom, you can't split them up. They are the same person. You're telling your mother, "Hey, I'm getting married. Sorry you can't be here." Now that's the end of the world for her. That's the end of the world for his mother. But I'm so glad that Lena stayed in touch with his family. I really am, with your family. Now, did you know her at all? I mean, you're about my age, so
No,
the way it goes, you never met her, you never got to
no.
meet her.
Again,
That's a shame.
I'm bad with numbers. I want to say she passed away in 1999. So
Okay.
in 1999, I was 11.
Yeah, so you are my age. I was 11.
Yeah. So I was just a wee child, and your priorities aren't straight at 11.
No.
Had I known that the time clock was ticking and how easily accessible that kind of a relationship could have been, I absolutely would have jumped on that possibility, because time is fleeting, absolutely. And one of my biggest things in life is fear of missing out. FOMA. What do they call it? FOMO? Fear of
FOMO.
missing. Yeah. And so, I'm a collector of people. So I haven't been to California in a number of years, but the next time I go to California, poor Josh, I know where he lives. Because I see him on my Christmas card list. So poor Josh is going to have to put up with me, and poor Fred is going to have to put up with me, and anybody else that I can find while I'm there. And that circles me all the way back to John Seda. I wasn't super familiar with his name when they announced who he was going to play, and that was John, and that's fine. Firstly, again, gorgeous man, great physique for that. Um, I wasn't sure of the decision until I saw the Pacific the whole way through. And then you see the Pacific the whole way through, and at a certain point your heart does a flutter, because again, here is a personification of somebody that you would have never been able to know if John Seda didn't play Manila John. And so I get to lay eyes on somebody in real time that I never would have seen move, talk, love, eat, go to war, any of these things. And John Seda, I told John, brings to life somebody that I would never have had the chance to know otherwise. And I think from my conversations with John Seda that John Seda carries John Basilone with him everywhere he goes. I think not that he's delusional about who he is, but I think in John Seda's heart, part of him is John Basilone. And I know that they very much resonated with each other. And I know that John experienced some very specific and particular feelings following taking on that role and with the conclusion of that role. But I believe that's private. I think that's up to John Seda to tell people if he wants to. John is fine. John Seda is fine. I just I think it was a very moving part for him. And I think that everyone else that was portrayed in that series got a little bit of a leg up, because you still have, for example, Henry Sledge. You could go to the Sledge household and sit down and say, "Tell me about your dad." But John, not so much, because by the time the Pacific came around, Lena had passed, and obviously John had passed. And there's was so few Basilones left. And me, I'm only as good as every Ambrose book I've ever read. I'm only as good as every internet forum I've ever read. So a lot of my information is hearsay, but I've been blessed enough to meet enough people that I can extrapolate just a little bit more than maybe the average individual could. And I would love to read a Lena book. I know there's so much more about her, but
Don't tempt me, Jaclyn.
gonna
Don't
have
tempt
We
us.
say this
have
all
to
the
come from
We're gonna
time.
write a book and we want it to be about all these women that we've spoken about. And we
it's
want
gonna
it,
have to come from her friends that are still alive, her
yeah.
family, her nephews. And I mean,
Right.
and a lot of stuff is from extrapolation, just household photos, just photos of maybe Thanksgiving dinner. And you see, I haven't seen this photo, I'm making something up, but you see a picture of a Thanksgiving dinner, and you notice that Lena has multiple, musical instruments hanging from the wall. And we can do a deep dive and find out that maybe she was just like a low-key musical prodigy. Just a lot of has to come from extrapolation because
Yeah.
we were too young to know how much we wanted to talk to these people, which is horse hockey.
Yeah, I
She reminds
agree.
me a bit the way you say, like, she wore the pants in the family and all the gatherings were at her house. She reminds me of my grandmother, my dad's mom, because in the sense that she lost her husband relatively young. They married right before the war and they had 4 boys. And my dad is the youngest. And then my grandfather died in 66. So my dad was only 6 years old. She was the oldest of, I want to say, maybe 18 children. There was a couple of sets of twins in there. And there was four siblings from a first marriage. It's a
Okay.
very wild story. Her mom's her mom was married, had 4 children. Her first husband, I think, fell down a flight of stairs, cracked his head, and died.
Oh,
And they took the kids into foster care, and they told my great grandmother, well, if you want to get your kids back, you have to get married again. She got married to my great grandfather and
Right.
had my grandmother and a bunch of other siblings. My grandmother was always the house where everybody came.
oh yeah.
Her brothers, her sisters, they'd come in and they'd yell, hey, Madeline, I'm here. And she was always the house where we would piece together the tables. It was one of those old railroad style Brooklyn houses. The tables, nothing matched, nothing sat level, but we would lay all the tables from the back to the front, up the little step into the kitchen for Thanksgiving. And everybody, all 4 boys with their kids, their wives, would be spread out at this table, and it would be my grandmother and her sisters in the kitchen. And they would be the last ones to eat, and they would eat in the kitchen away from everybody else. And it was like, but that was the center of it all, the epicenter of it. And she
And
went from 66 until 2010. She never remarried. She just lived her life
but
in her same Brooklyn house.
I don't, it's
And
really
they
interesting.
never remarried, these women.
Mm.
Why would
We
they?
say it all the time, Winnie and I, that the men would always remarry if they had
Yeah,
the
the
opportunity,
women
and the
rarely
women never
would.
did. And I
Okay.
think it's because the women were self-sufficient and they knew they could take care of themselves and they could take care of their children. And the men, not so much, could take care of themselves. They needed somebody to take care of themselves, like to take
Yeah.
care of them.
I'm glad you said this because I agree with you, and I hate to in any capacity emasculate John Basilone. But Lena, I 100% know, could have never been married and probably been 110% A-okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
John, on the other hand, I think was like most men I've ever known in my entire life, where they are always looking for a partner, not maybe out of necessity, but just because I think to a certain degree, men need companionship a little bit more, and maybe they need to be cared for in a certain capacity. And I'm not even talking about anything dirty. I'm just talking about keeping the house tidy.
Right. Laundry, just the
Yeah.
necessities, laundry,
Guess who
grocery
doesn't do laundry
shopping.
in my house? The boy, you know? But, guess who doesn't do any lawn care either? Me. So, I'm
Exactly.
As you
but
shouldn't.
amen. I'm a dad.
Agree.
But I think John had been looking for a partner. If you look at the letters that he sent to his mom, I wanted to get married. I wanted kids. He knew where Lena, the exchanges between the two of them that we see in the Pacific are indeed very genuine. You don't impress me. I don't care what your name is. I'm a sergeant too. Respect me. If
Yeah.
he had been disrespectful, she probably would have thrown something at him, and we would not have gotten a love story out of the Pacific,
Right.
because she didn't need him.
Yeah.
She wanted him. And so there's that statement. But that takes me back to my maternal grandmother, whose name was Margaret, who they referred to as Sarge Marge. And She was not in the military, but she obviously married my maternal grandfather, who flew Army Air Corps in World War II. He was an Italian immigrant as well. And because he spoke so many languages, they used him as a POW translator, blah, 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 blah. But she ruled the roost because after my grandfather came out of World War II, he said, man, I really like flying. He became a commercial airline pilot for Braniff Airlines. And in true Italian fashion, apparently there was no television in the bedroom, so they had 9 kids. So you have a woman running a household with 9 children, and the father, the patriarch of the family, is frequently away because he's flying a plane out of state. He's gone. So you have women who I think, again, arguably World War II turned women into either the head of the household or an equal partner, because it's at the cusp of that afterwards where we really start to see a spike in fully independent women and women in the workforce. And so I think so much that pivots in World War II. I mean, culturally, with the acceptance of the Italians, women having their own homes. That was Lena's whole life afterwards. She loved her home. She kept her home. She hosted the holiday parties. She loved her garden. She took care of her house. I mean, and now this statistic I do know off the top of my head. I think only 24% of homeowners in the United States are women on the deed by themselves.
Wow.
It might have been higher back then. Don't quote me.
Yeah, probably. Did you ever find out what she meant by "I don't want to bother anyone" after, when they said we can
Yes.
bury you with your
Bury you in
husband?
Arlington.
What did she mean by "I don't want to bother anyone"? Because if they were willing to do the work for her, and we know that she had kept reserving her spot through the National Archives that we've looked through, there's a letter where she's paid up to a certain month, and then obviously you find out she's in California.
I think she was always a no fuss woman, no fuss, no muss, just head down, get it done, achieve the things, check the box. And I don't know if that thought process struck her a little bit later. I have to assume that the spaces immediately next to John were literally already filled, because I don't think they put him way out in the North 40 and then said, leave everything around him empty just in case. So I have to assume that they would have had to have exhumed somebody and relocated them to make space for her. And you would have a very hard time convincing me of that, even if maybe not if I was Lena and John was John, but you would have a hard time convincing me to have somebody exhumed to make my uninhabited body go where I wanted it to go. That is so bizarre, but I have a very high respect for leaving things intact. I have a dog that passed away in March, and I've been so distraught about it. I said, I'm going to get a ring made with some of his fur. Well, why not his ashes? You've had him cremated. No, I'm not taking bits of his body and splitting it up in different places. That's weird. We don't do that. So the probability of me exhuming a whole human just to go and be planted in a ground in a body that I don't possess anymore is insane to me. And so maybe that overcame her. Now here's the hot gossip. The hot gossip of it all is that while Lena did not remarry, she did take a gentleman friend in life. I can't tell you how long after John passed that she took said gentleman friend. It would have had to have been at least, I'm trying to think about how old her nephew Bob is. Hang on, I'm going to do some math. Math is not my strong suit, as we all know.
No, mine either.
Math is not my thing.
So if it's 2025 and Bob is 78 years old, he was born 1947. So Bob has cognitive memories of Charlie, Lena's man friend, being around in his younger years. I want to say, I'm just going to cherry pick and say roughly 12. So 1947 plus 12 is 1959. And John passed away in 1945. So 14 years later, Lena has a man friend, just the one. There's no memories of multiple. There's no memories of cohabitation. There's no memories of anything scandalous, but she could have remarried and she refused to remarry. And she refused to remarry just as much as she refused any offers from any studios. And the remark, even to the questions, notably so to the point where it's Googleable, is her statement, you've already had the best. You don't settle for anything less. And what the Rigi family statement was to the talking about Charlie, because I asked, do you think that the love was very genuine? There was no confusion about that between Lena and John. And I asked, well, why didn't she want to remarry? Because I have to imagine that being alone from 1945 to 1999 is a very long time. And the statement that I got was that she didn't not want to be fully who she was. I think she identified very much with not just the name, but being a Basilone. And I know it wasn't about the name because she wasn't a publicity seeker in any capacity. But John was her husband, and John was, I think, the love of her life. And I think that she wanted to stay true to who she was. And she was, first and foremost, after her own whole personality, his wife. And she wanted to stay that way. And she passed away in 1999 wearing her wedding ring. That's who she was.
It's so it makes me so emotional, especially I've thought for a couple of years that she spent all this time
Oh.
alone by herself. So knowing that she had someone else just for a little bit
And a
is
whole
really
family.
sweet.
I mean,
Yeah, and a whole family as well.
that was the biggest fear that we had, was that we were going to dig up something that was, she lived by herself alone for 50 years, and that there was, nothing after John. And it's just makes me feel better to know that she had her brothers and her nieces and her nephews and, a man friend. But, nobody should have to go through life alone.
Oh, no.
Even if you're not
absolutely.
married, even if you're not married, right? Even if you're not married, you'd say, oh, yeah, I'm a little lonely, but I have friends, I have family, I say it all the time, like, yeah, right. It's just me at home, but I'm not alone. I'm lucky. And I'm glad that she was lucky too.
I wish, when we first chatted, you guys were so excited. And I said, hey, look, she lived a very simple life after the war. I was like, if you don't think there's enough to talk about, I respect that. And I wish I came to the table saying that Lena took up skydiving and competitive skeet shooting and whitewater rafting because she had such a notable personality from her time in the military. You want to be able to come forward and say, and she continued being the absolute most amazing woman in the world. Um, but at the same time, big love is very hard to come by. It's very impactful. And when you lose big love, it very much changes you or it can stop you. And at the same time, very true love, very rare big love, as I call it, move mountains love, is sometimes just enough. And so some part of me thinks that maybe the life that she lived afterwards was so simple because she had already felt the paramount of all feelings. She had already risen to the apex of just the mountain of feelings. And what else is better than that afterwards? Why not just keep a tidy house and be a family woman and feed your family and hang out with the babies and do volunteer work? What else is there? You joined the military during World War II. You were sassy, you were beautiful, you married the man about town, loved each other till death, and then had a slow, peaceful, quiet, beautiful life in your dream home. Sounds great to me.
Yeah,
No.
I agree.
I think that where we just ended is the best place to wrap it up, because I don't think you can get any better than big love, which is what we have for you, Jaclyn. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today. the goal is always to share stories of women that aren't out there because they deserve to be more than a footnote in the war. And I think
feel like we
you've
keep
helped us
proving
accomplish
that.
that.
Yeah.
And we cannot say thank you enough for that.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm so pleased to know you both, and I'm so sorry you're both just been inducted into the Basilone family. You're part of my repertoire.
Oh no.
Oh no, we're so
Horrific.
sad.
Keep me. Please add me on.
It's terrible.
Boo.
We are honored. We are honored.
Thank you so much, Jaclyn.
Anytime.
All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we will catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.